The first breath. The sun rose over the Rift Valley, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. Mist, like a soft blanket, curled around the acacia trees. A small figure, Luma, stirred in the tall grass, her eyes blinking open to the new light. For a long time, Luma had moved on four limbs, her world low to the ground. But today, something was different. A strange pull in her chest, a whisper from the earth beneath her feet, urged her to rise. Slowly, carefully, she pushed herself up, one foot, then the other. The world tilted, and for the first time, she saw over the tops of the grass. The horizon stretched out, vast and unknown. A new feeling bloomed inside her. It was not hunger, not thirst, but something else. A spark of awareness. A sense of herself separate from the trees and the wind. She took a step, then another. Her new height brought new sights. A family of giraffes grazed in the distance, their long necks like towers. A flock of bright-winged birds took flight from a tree, a flash of color against the blue sky. But with this new view came a new sound. A low growl rumbled from a thicket of bushes. Luma's new awareness was joined by a new feeling, fear. Her heart pounded in her chest, a drumbeat against the silence. She turned and ran, not on four limbs, but on two. Her legs pumped, her arms swung, and the world blurred around her. She was faster than she had ever been before. She stumbled and fell, landing in a patch of soft moss. The growl was gone. The world was quiet again. She looked down at her hands, her fingers splayed on the green ground. The fear had passed, but the new feeling remained. She had moved, not just to find food or shelter, but to save herself. She had made a choice. She had become something more. As the stars began to pepper the darkening sky, Luma stood once more. She was no longer just a creature of instinct. She was a being of thought, of choice, of awareness. And she took a deep, slow breath, her first breath, as a new kind of life. Fire without flame. The world was a place of endless green and golden light. Kale, small and quick, moved through the tall grasses. His hands, calloused and strong, dug into the earth, searching for the hidden roots that would feed his family. He heard the buzz of flies before he saw the carcass. A great beast, long dead, lay half hidden in the brush. Kale approached cautiously, a heavy stone clutched in his hand. He knelt beside a leg bone, raising the stone high. With a sharp crack, the bone split, revealing the rich white marrow within. A low growl, deeper than the earth itself, vibrated through the air. Kale froze. He looked up, his eyes wide. Through the trees, a flash of tawny fur, and a glimpse of long, curved teeth. A saber-toothed cat. His heart pounded as he scrambled to find Lyra, pulling her behind a large rock. They held their breath, pressed against the cold stone. The world was silent, save for the thumping of their own hearts. The great cat stalked past, its shadow long and menacing. They did not move, not a muscle, not a breath, until the sound of its heavy paws faded into the distance. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple, a new scent drifted on the wind. It was not the smell of rain, or of flowers, or of the animals they hunted. It was a dry, hot smell, like 1,000 suns burning at once. They climbed a small rise and saw it, a great, hungry beast of light and heat, devouring the forest in the distance. It roared with a sound that was not a voice, but the crackling of 1,000,000 burning branches. They did not make fire, but they knew its hunger. The wind howled, a great mournful cry that carried the heat and the smoke to them. The distant roars of animals fleeing the monstrous light echoed through the night. They huddled together, small and helpless against the power of a world they did not yet understand. All through the night, the red glow pulsed on the horizon. The air grew thick with ash, and the world seemed to hold its breath. They watched, their eyes reflecting the terrible light. a silent lesson in the power of the wild. The next morning, the air was still and cool. A faint smell of smoke remained. They cautiously approached the edge of the burned land. The ground was black and barren, the trees like charred skeletons reaching for a sky they could no longer touch. But then, Kale knelt and pointed, pushing through the scorched earth, a tiny green shoot, a single, brave leaf, reaching for the sun. The fire had taken, but it had also made way for something new, and they knew, in their hearts, that life would always find a way. Leaves, the snap, the silent bond. The world was vast and full of sound. The rustle of leaves, the snap of a twig, the distant cry of a great bird. Lyra and her son Kale moved through the tall grasses, their hands linked. They did not speak in words, but in the gentle squeeze of a hand, a shared glance, a soft hum. Their days were a quiet rhythm of finding food and finding rest. Lyra would show Kale which berries were sweet and which roots were safe. He would watch her hands, mimicking her movements, learning the silent language of survival. A change came on the wind. The air grew heavy and still. The sky, once a brilliant blue, turned a bruised, angry purple. A low rumble echoed in the distance, a sound that made the earth tremble. Lyra's hand tightened on Kale's. The first drops of rain fell, fat and heavy, spattering on the leaves. Then came the downpour. The world was a roar of water, the wind a great, howling beast. Lyra pulled Kale close, her body a small, warm shelter against the cold and the storm. They were soaked and shivering. The storm showed no sign of stopping. Through the curtain of rain, Lyra saw a flicker of movement. Another figure, an older male named Ronan, was gesturing towards a small cave opening tucked into a rocky outcrop. His eyes met hers, a silent question. Lyra nodded, a quick, grateful motion. She guided Kale towards the cave. Ronan moved aside, his posture open and welcoming. Inside, the air was dry and still. The sounds of the storm were muffled, a distant, comforting roar. Ronan sat near the entrance, his breathing a soft, steady rhythm. Lyra sat with Kale in her lap, her own breath matching his. The only sounds were the rain outside, the gentle grunts of the small group, and the quiet, steady beat of their hearts. No words, only warmth. The first bond was not spoken, it was felt. Ronan offered a piece of dried meat. Lyra accepted it, breaking it in half to share with Kale. A silent exchange, a promise of safety and belonging. The storm passed, leaving the world clean and new. They emerged from the cave, blinking in the fresh light. The air smelled of wet earth and clean rain. Ronan reached out, and with a soft touch, groomed a stray leaf from Kale's hair. They walked together now, a small, silent family. The bond between them was not built on words, but on the shared shelter of a storm, the warmth of a shared meal, and the quiet, steady rhythm of a community that had found each other in the wild. The hunt and the hunted. The world was a symphony of silence and sudden sound. For Ilara and her small scavenging group, every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig was a question. Was it a friend, or was it the hungry maw of a predator? They moved as one, a silent, coordinated unit, their lives a delicate dance between caution and courage. Their task was simple, yet fraught with peril: find what others had left behind. They were not hunters, but scavengers, and their success depended on speed and a keen eye. Finian, the swiftest of them all, was always the first to spot a promising sign. A flock of vultures circling, a disturbed patch of earth. Today, Finian led them to the base of a rocky cliff face, where the air was thick, with the scent of a recent kill. A large carcass lay half hidden by a boulder. It was a windfall, but a low, guttural growl rumbled from the shadows. The carcass was not abandoned. A giant hyena, its eyes glinting with a terrible hunger, emerged from behind the rock. A single sharp bark from Kalin was all the warning they needed. The hyena lunged, its massive paws thudding on the earth. The chase was on. The soundscape was a terrifying symphony. The pounding of their feet on the hard ground, the deep, rumbling growl of the beast behind them, and their own ragged, panting breaths. To live was to run. To run was to remember where safety lay. Ilara's mind was a map of the territory, every rock and crevice a potential escape. They reached the edge of a sheer cliff. Below, a narrow ledge offered a path to safety. Kalin went first, his movements practiced and sure. But the hyena was too close. Finian, seeing the beast gaining on them, scrambled up the gnarled trunk of a great ancient tree. He was fast, so fast, but the hyena was faster. Its jaws snapped at his heels as he pulled himself up, its growls shaking the very air. A sickening crunch echoed through the air, followed by a final, desperate cry. The hyena's growls turned to a satisfied, guttural rumble. Ilara and Kalin, now safe on the ledge below, froze. The silence that followed was louder than any roar. They did not speak. There were no words for the hollow space left behind. They sat on the cold rock, the wind a mournful whisper around them. A single, small tear traced a path down Ilara's cheek. The hunt was over, but the cost was immeasurable. But to live was to move forward. Ilara looked at Kalin, and he met her gaze. The bond between them, forged in shared fear and sorrow, was now stronger than ever. They had to remember the lessons, the strategies, the cooperation that had kept them alive. They had to honor Finian's memory by surviving. They descended the cliff, a silent, two-person unit now. The world was still dangerous, but they were not alone. They were the hunt and the hunted, but they were also the survivors. And in their shared silence, they carried the memory of the one they had lost, a silent promise to keep running, to keep living, to keep remembering where safety lay. The world was the memory of water. The world was a symphony of green. For the people of the valley, life was a dance with the seasons. The streams chattered over smooth stones, and the air hummed with the buzz of 1,000 insects. They were a part of the land, and the land was a part of them. But the dance changed. The sun grew hotter, and the chattering streams grew quiet. The green faded to a dusty brown, and the hum of insects was replaced by a dry, rustling wind. The people watched, their hearts heavy with a familiar worry. The drought was a silent, creeping thing. The earth cracked like old pottery, and the air was thick with the scent of dust. Their food was scarce, and their water gourds were nearly empty. Lyra, heavy with the new life she carried, moved slowly, her steps careful on the parched ground. "We must go," Kalin said, his voice raspy. "The land has forgotten us, but the elephants remember." He told them of a story passed down through generations, of a hidden spring known only to the great beasts. Water was memory, he whispered, and memory was survival. The journey began. Their footsteps on the dry earth were the only sound, a steady, rhythmic beat against the vast silence. They followed the faint trail of the elephants, a path of broken branches and large, round prints in the dust. The sun beat down on them, but they kept moving. They heard the distant, low rumble of the elephants, a sound that was both a promise and a guide. Lyra, though weary, held on to the hope of the new life within her. The elephant calls grew louder, and soon they saw them, a great herd moving with a purpose they could only guess at. They followed, a small shadow in the wake of giants. The world seemed to hold its breath. The journey was almost over, but a new one was just beginning. Under the shade of a lone, ancient tree, Lyra gave birth to a son. His first cry was a fragile sound, a new note in the song of the dry land. They watched as the lead elephant pushed a large boulder aside, revealing a small, dark opening in the rock. The sound was a whisper at first, then a gentle, steady trickle. Water, the memory of the land, held safe and secret. They drank deeply, the water a cool, life-giving balm. They named the baby Finian, a name that meant fair and white, like the hope he brought. They had followed the memory of the water, and it had led them to a new beginning. Becoming tomorrow. The world was a vast green whisper. For Kale and his people, life was a rhythm of sun and shadow, of following the herds and gathering the berries that grew wild. They moved with the land, their hands knowing only what the earth offered freely. But Kale's eyes saw more than just the path. He watched the way the river carved the stone, the way the wind bent the tall grasses, and the way the animals solved their own small problems. He was a quiet observer in a world of constant motion. One day, he saw a small brown bird with a nut in its beak. The bird hopped to a large flat stone, placed the nut down, and then, with a quick flick of its head, picked up a smaller stone. It raised the stone high and brought it down with a sharp crack. The sound echoed, a sharp punctuation in the quiet forest. Kale's heart began to beat faster. He picked up a smooth stone, heavy in his hand, and a hard-shelled nut. He placed the nut on a flat rock, just like the bird had. The stone felt right. He raised it high. Crack! The sound was loud, a perfect echo of the birds. Kale's hand trembled. He put the stone down and picked up the nut. The shell was broken, and inside, the sweet, soft meat was revealed. In that moment, the earth changed, not with fire, but with thought. Kale ran to his family, holding the cracked nut out to his father, who was sitting by the fire. He showed him the stones, the nut, and the simple, powerful idea. His father looked from the broken shell to Kale's bright eyes, a slow understanding dawning on his face. Soon, the sound of stone on stone became a new part of the forest's song. The people learned to use the tools for more than just nuts. They used them to sharpen sticks and scrape hides. The world was no longer just a place to live, but a place to be shaped. The seasons turned, and the years passed. The simple stones became sharper, more precise. The tools became a part of them, an extension of their hands and their will. The spark of thought had become a steady flame. One night, Kale sat alone on a high hill, looking up at the vast, star-strewn sky. He had learned to shape the world, but he knew there was so much more to understand. The same curiosity that had led him to the first tool now led him to the stars. He looked down at his grandson, who was trying to crack a nut with a clumsy stone. Kale reached out, his hand covering the boys, and guided him. The knowledge was passed on, a silent promise from one generation to the next. The journey had just begun.